Stoners of Reddit, what's the best idea you've come up with while stoned? Johnny Snowflake said. Roll up butter. Basically a glue stick or chapstick tube of butter that you roll up to apply to toast. Turned out the Japanese had already beaten me to it. American Boy 1776 said. Legally change my last name to match my grandfather's, who basically stepped up and acted as my dad my whole life. Being in his mid-90s, he's notoriously hard to shop for as material things don't mean much to him anymore. He was honored. Government Chemical 11 said. Honestly, I was sitting on the deck at the medical grow-up I had been working at smoking a fatty and asked my friend why he is so at peace and happy. He said, look around, how could I not be? And I was like, he is right, go become some kind of plant scientist to live your dream. Legalization is coming. And so the next day I walks in and enrolled. 5 years have passed since that day, and I did my first 2 years in an amazing grow store troubleshooting issues and teaching fertilizers. Through this I have done many LPs troubleshooting and was offered a camp because of my background. Getting high with my buddy is why I am living this dream. Hazard said. I like to, on occasion, impulse buy in the snack aisle while stoned, then put all the stuff away as soon as I'm home. Then get more stoned. The idea is to be stoned and forget that bit happened, and then later, I'd remember that I had awesome snacks and it feels like Christmas. Wish I out Coldtil said. I was baked in playing Skyrim, realized just how satisfying hours of side quests can be. I want an RPG that is all side quests. The main plot is happening to someone else. Your primary focus is to bring that nice old lady some flowers, or to clear trolls from a cave. Let the other guy deal with the big bad demons or war or whatever. You've got an errand to run for the shopkeep. You do get affected by the war etc. A bridge blew out, so you have to take another route. Supplies are low, so prices are climbing and you have to really hunt for things. You overhear people in town complaining about burnt fields or having fearful conversations in the pub. Every now and then you'll see a dude in crazy armor sprint by, but mostly you're just going about your day. If it was done right, I'd play TF out of that game. Lunelli said. Call it Samaritan, maybe? I'd play the hell out of that too. Depends on how involved you want your character to be in the storyline, but maybe the final quest could be the hero coming to you for help, battered and nearly defeated, depending on you for some key weapon that you learned how to make over time, the sturdy handle made from the finest wood from the carpenter you helped, the blade from the blacksmith, who gave you his own knife after you saved his son by delivering medicine, the magic imbued in the blade from this old lady just before she passed away because you were so sweet to her for months by cleaning her house and bringing her favorite berries each week, or something, etc. And so you're the only person in the city who knows from all your experiences all the skills necessary to craft this final thing the hero needs. Taser Lord said. Vatagrams. When you like somebody and you want to give them something but you have no excuse, you send a Vatagram. A guy dressed up as Darth Vader goes and delivers a present and says happy birthday, and they say but it isn't my birthday, and dude says I have altered the birthday, pray I do not alter it any further, and walks away. Vanilla Nico said. Used to work at a Wendy's where pretty much all the employees were lethally stoned at any given time, especially those of us who usually worked closing. Anyway, one particularly slow day we just went out to the parking lot and smoked a joint and then came back inside and made Baconator fries but put literally every cheese in the store in them and a ton more bacon and mixed them up in one of the salad cartons. It was great. Deleted said. I worked there in the 80s as teen. Got the job at 15. For some reason when you were in trouble with as a teen they think getting a job is a good idea. We used to take the chili powder and powder the chicken before prepping it. We'd then put it on a big classic bun, dress it as if it was a single with everything, no cheese no bacon, plus Wendy's chili oil. It was my favorite sandwich for a long time. I'd order my chicken on the Kaiser bun and ask for the chili oil. It wasn't as good without the breading seasoned. Not as epic mealtime as your story, but if there are any Wendy's workers out there, try it. Even without the big classic bun. Atonement JSFT said. I'm taking naming suggestions for this one, 10% royalties. Get yourself a pop can of cinnamon roll dough balls. Pop out 2 at a time, resist the temptation to eat them raw. Any consistency should be fine as long as they're not completely frozen. Heat up your waffle iron to med-high, Light butter coat optional, but not necessary. 2 dough balls per waffle grid. Close the iron and apply light pressure. You should get a little bit of steam from the excess moisture. Hold for 10-20 seconds. Let up when the vapors start to thin out. Careful because they'll burn quick, and burned cinnamon waffles is way worse than burned regular waffles. When they're cooked all the way through, they don't stick. Repeat thrice until you have a giant stack of cinnamon waffles. Spread a thin layer of the popcorn icing on each one. Trust me here, less is more. I could eat the whole tub of icing with a spoon and not blink, but the cinnamon waffle icing combo is potent and a conservative ratio must be respected. End result: fluffy, slightly chewy cinnamon-embedded waffles with a cream cheese glaze. Prep time: 5 minutes. Serving size: 1 stone collegiate freshman or 4 stone 30-yo adults. Johnstein82 said, "Best idea, I'll become a hairdresser. I was 20 smoking a joint just sitting there. I did a few months at a community college and really didn't know what I was interested in. And then I was sitting back smoking a joint and I just came to my head like bam, and I looked up at school near me that was one of the best schools for hair where I lived. I enrolled and I'm still doing it almost 20 years later. I've traveled everywhere and worked on many different projects throughout the years. I'm more into real estate now, but I'm still at the salon a couple times a week. I also cut outside the shop and do weddings once in a while. One of the better ideas." Newtown Kid said, "My buddy and I were climbing a tree and we accidentally broke a branch off. Feeling bad about leaving the branch to die, we decided its best chance of survival was to stick it in the mud. Our hope was that it would sprout some roots and sort itself out. But there was a problem. The branch wasn't jetting enough light, and definitely not enough light to magically sprout roots and turn into a new tree. Our solution? Rip down all the trees around it that were blocking the light. We had already pushed a small tree over and were working on the second one by the time we realized that we had become the very thing we were trying to avoid. So yay. Not our brightest hour. Edit. So I thought the title was asking for worst idea." Alantsu said, "I came up with a theory to help lower-paid workers earn more by requiring the highest salaries to be limited by the average worker's salary times some multiplier. This would include stocks and bonuses and be required by any company receiving a federal contract. Creating a county-based minimum wage by using the average price to rent a one-bedroom apartment in the county and the 30% rule, meaning if you work a 40-hour week then no more than 30% should go to rent. The lowest minimum wage if done by state would be West Virginia at $14.25. Homeless rehab centers based on closed malls. Transitional housing along the ring road that goes around the mall. Green space in between. The food court can easily handle meals. Room for offices for aid in housing, lawyers, medical treatment, and mental health services. Room for a school for the kids. There would also be plenty of room for work training such as cooks in the kitchen. You can train nurses in the medical facilities. There's room to add some construction or other vocational training programs. If you set up sites in multiple states, you could also help people transition to areas where it's safer or has more opportunities, and also help if people want to relocate closer to their families." 209 said, "My concept addressed the issue of lack of drive-ins to see movies. It modernized the entire affair by eliminating the need to drive, bringing the drive-in to any part of the planet and increasing the wow factor exponentially in the process. Now imagine sending up satellites shaped like your typical HD TV and stringing thousands, millions of them together to create a giant display surface orbiting the planet in Leo. Each individual display would function as a pixel. All together they would resemble a giant HD TV thousands of miles in size. Sound? No problem. Each person would wear a headset or earbuds for optimal sound quality. It would all be paid for by advertising, of course, so shows would be free for those that would want to watch. I would imagine it would be quite the communal event if it were possible, with entire swaths of space turning into giant picnics of sorts. I definitely have to rate this one as up there, or out there, on my personal list of ideas created while under the influence." Student Confident 9045 said, "Prefacing this with completed ideas versus stoned ideas that will be followed up on a future stoned date are different beasts. Stoned idea, become a hacker. Stoned idea follow-up, use MJ to escape worse addictions and channel that energy into computers. I wound up making stupid money as a software engineer instead of working in food as a high school dropout. It is still my favorite hobby and haven't stepped foot back in school. I write cryptography steganography tools in my free time. I've spent my entire career stoned. It was even encouraged at some places I worked. Lots of smoked lunches. Wet Paint said, I lived for a while in East Africa, and we could buy lots and lots of bushweed, but no skins or filters or tobacco or the like, but the weed was weak enough that we just smoked it unadulterated. To make joints, we used to take straws from the bar, and use the McDonald's-style paper covers as skins, and take the straw out and refill with weed and a roach. Did the job, and made for gigantic joints. It took a couple of weeks for the hostel owner to notice that whenever we stayed with him, the usage of straws went through the roof. When we ran out of those, he told us to go and find a papaw tree, and pull a leaf off, and keep the entire stem. It's a hollow stem, and has a handy bowl shape to the end of the stem, where it emerged from the tree branch. Sorted, we thought, and hired one of the local kids to come back with a branch of a papaw tree. He was like 8, and didn't have solid English, and he and a gaggle of his mates came back 10 minutes later dragging an entire tree, freshly pulled from the ground. About 10 feet tall. Make a long story short, we used all the leaves of the tree, and were idly tossing the denuded tree trunk about the place, when one of us dropped it, and broke it. We saw that the entire tree trunk was hollow, just like the stems, and it were able to fashion a gigantic pipe out of each end of the broken trunk. Felt like a bunch of fucking McGoovers, we did. Anyone got a similar tale of ingenuity? Smodfin said, my wife made me banana pudding. Someone randomly brought us a strawberry cake from Ralph's, because it was my birthday. I was very high, playing Halo, and my wife was offering me a blowjob. It was basically the height of my life. Middle of her unbuttoned my pants I had an epiphany. I should mix the banana pudding and strawberry cake. When I tell you it was god tier, I am not fucking around. My only regret is not stopping the blowjob to try the pudding cake sooner, and it was a fucking incredible blowjob. Ghostface 4899 said, now I would like to preface that this wasn't a good idea, but it was one of the better ones. It was one of the first times I ever smoked. My friend and I just got zooted in his basement on a dabs pen, so naturally sooner rather than later, the munchies came along. We ended up making buttered toast with sugar and honey. This creation, for whatever reason, we named Zamboni. Also sometimes when I smoke I'll get weird little bursts of motivation. This weed-induced motivation led me to pursue a management position. Dink said, fuck, I didn't want to give this one up. Won't be nearly legal anytime soon, but here it is. The cannabis. Similar to a party van, but for stoners. Bus with the backs torn out to become lounges fit with beanbag chairs, TVs, stereos, a gaming system or two. People could rent out the bus for 3-hour sessions. Before the session, we stocked the bus with snacks and weed. We would allow people to bring their own weed, but encourage the high-quality cannabis we provide and a massive upcharge, of course. Snacks will also be expensive. Going with the hotel mini-fridge technique. Somewhere in the cabin of the bus, probably near a main seating area, will be a control tablet for the vehicle built into the bus. There, the passengers can change the lighting, work the TV, and even order food for the driver to pick up. That's pretty much all I got so far, but I have a notes page on my phone and I keep adding to the list. The Frisky Wizard said, I do some fun coding while stoned. One time I built a small ecosystem simulation in Unity, where plants absorbed water and reproduced. All water came from a finite pool, which was distributed in various lakes and ponds. It also evaporated and was stored in clouds, which has a chance to rain after a certain amount of evaporation. Each time a place reproduced, they had a chance to mutate. If there wasn't enough water to survive, they died. There were simple graphics and you could walk around in it, don't starve style. Just movement in rotation, not graphics. In the end, I had tens of thousands of mutating plants going through their lives. It was interesting to see the different mutations that won out. McWhiters 9511 said, if we all have a completely unique part of life, our own perception is all that we know. We don't know anyone else. We know our perception of that person. I don't know food. I know how I perceive food. How I perceive any aspect of life is not the aspect fundamentally. As long as you are alive in any form of identity, everything else is an other to yourself, and therefore completely unknowable. The self is everything you know and can ever know. There is nothing beyond your awareness. TLDR, shit's a matrix. The regular throwaway said, I have one 2011. Got completely elevated on super edibles and then did several rips with friends. Retreated into my spare bedroom while my friends partied and I came up with a guitar riff beat. Fiddled around over the next week. The result ended up on a major motion picture soundtrack and I got paid like a motherfucker and scored a great job afterwards. That one worked out. I have a couple of times however when it did not. Loudco HD said, I'm not a recreational drug user but I was in the hospital waiting on surgery, amputation to be precise, and I was pretty doped up. At one point I told my wife I had visited the Oracle and she, same lady as in the Matrix, had explained the universe to me and I had then explained it to her. It was all so simple, yet elegant, I understood everything. We didn't have to fight wars, people didn't have to starve, we could all live in harmony. When I got home out of surgery it was going to be my mission in life to bring peace to mankind. I was experiencing true clarity for the first time in my life. Woke up from surgery, couldn't remember a fucking thing. Asked my wife what I told her, she said I was talking in gibberish, she didn't video me. Gone, it was all gone. She is on standing orders now, if I am ever septic again, and an organ failure near death, she is to record every word I say. McKinnon said, when I was high on mushrooms I thought of the sun, and how it isn't just solar energy, that it's also causing mini explosions to flare off of its surface. I then thought, we harness solar energy, imagine if we could harness explosive energy. I then started thinking about how we could do it, if we could maybe confine an explosion to a certain space, and use the force to drive something out of the space. I really thought I was onto something while only thinking about it for around 20 minutes. Then I realized engines exist, and we've had that technology for about 120 years. That being said, it was still a completely original thought that I came up with by myself, while flying off of 5 grams of mushrooms. I feel like tons of great revolutionary ideas come from scientists who just get blasted on psilocybin. NoFlan 6320 said, at the end of my bachelor's degree, I was burnt out big time. I had become cynical and bitter. Was kinda depressed and felt lost too. Got really stoned one night, and I remembered why I started college in the first place. Why I went with psychology and mental health counseling as my career goal. I remembered the values I had when I was a kid and that had been with me for my whole life. It was like college had made me forget all of that. My motivation to keep going with my education returned to me, and I felt happy again. I remembered my purpose in life, and I still wonder, even now, why would something with the power to do that be illegal? It makes me sad and angry. Hanongman00001 said, raspberries, honey, key limes, avocado oil, basil, egg white, reduced balsamic vinegar, pinch of salt, pinch of ground pepper, corn medley. Blend all that and throw it on a nice leafy salad with tomato, onion, and cucumber. If you already had a prior great stoner idea, you can add those sliced carrots you marinate in the brine from your empty pickle jar. Now that I think about it, a nice chevre would have really elevated that salad. Ada, I had almost none of those ingredients when I came up with that. I was just stoned and thinking about key limes. Augie Greenfield said, food. So many good recipes I've come up with. One of the best, it is super simple, is the peanut butter, lettuce, with a sprinkle of salt, and mayo sandwich. I thought of it one in 1976 and I still make them today, usually when I'm high. Duff93 said, a mobile game called Classroom where you have to get through all your classes high as balls. Jesus, it's hard to explain the concept and how it played, but most of the game is from the perspective of you looking at your notebook for each class, English Lit, Spanish, Math and so on, and there was a little character in each notebook relevant to the subject running around trying to help you not look stoned AF while you were in class. One of my favorite parts was paranoid Shakespeare trying to make you look less sus in English class. If you fucked up and did anything too stupid or couldn't resist the snack meter, you got caught out. The crunching of the chips was too much of a giveaway. Got quite far into making the thing too, had a few buddies play test and they laughed their asses off but couldn't get anyone to do the soundtrack quite as silly as I'd have liked. I think the exaggerated mouth trumpet background music in Spanish may also have been a bit racist though. Grind 2000 said. Brainwaves headband, measure spikes in the software, use the spikes to determine what non-verbal, non-walking son, with cerebral palsy wanted or needed depending on signal. Programmed his chair to move to whatever place his brain is telling it by relaxing, anxiety, etc. Put some IR sensors on it so the chair doesn't run him into a wall, and bam, he communicates with his brain through his chair, that takes him to places in the house, right to us. He is unable to move his body or hands with enough coordination to work an electric chair. And bam, all thought up with some Durban poison CBD oil, which was actually my son's. Haha. Weird. It was like, maybe speaking to me, from his brain to my brain, and maybe that's how I came up with it. Our brainwaves were talking to each other. Oh, I just had another idea. And every pothead just put their tinfoil hats on. Let's laugh. Chiba Senzi said. Okay, so, you know Street Fighter? Well, what if it was, like, a card game? Yeah, we know, it's called Yomi. There's also Battlecon, and Combo Fighter, and Extinction. Nah, not like that, like a fighting card game where there was a different card for every move. Yeah, all those games have different cards for every move. No, every move like in Street Fighter. Like, how there's 3 buttons which all do a punch but they're all different. And 3 kicks. And special moves of different strengths. That would require too many cards, especially if you wanted to have special moves which were different in the same way. The whole thing would be a massive snarled up mess and impossible to balance. It took me a few years to figure out how to make it, and several more years to actually make it, and a couple more again to balance it. Now if only I could figure out how to find a publisher for it. The APR set only my sister can vouch for me, but I was stoned and started thinking about making an app that would assign random tasks for you to take photos, videos of yourself completing. I wanted to call it Double Dog. I was considering the legality of it and figured it would be too much of a headache not to get sued for someone hurting themselves or breaking the law. The movie Nerve came out like 3 or 4 years later. It took me a while to watch it cause I was mad someone made a movie about my idea. I am Good Mode said. Okay. So, tell me if this is hilarious because I came up with it several years ago and my girlfriend at the time thought it was stupid. So Dennis Rodman, wearing his usual outlandish attire, is walking down a sidewalk in a busy city. His entourage and news media are in tow. As they're walking, Dennis happens across 2 homeless children, a boy and girl, 6 and 8 years old. Old grimy clothes, dark grease smeared across their faces, etc. The girl approaches Dennis with big, brown, teary eyes and asks for some money for food while holding up an old hat. Dennis, realizing he has an opportunity for good PR, says absolutely and then makes a show of giving these kids money. He takes out his wallet and opens it up. The man's entire billfold is $100 bills. Dennis digs into his wallet and finally pulls his hand out. He drops 2 quarters into the hat and feels proud of himself for making a difference in the community.